Yes, Greg J. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Good morning. Oh, yeah. What a great day. Another great day in the life. Hope you're feeling good. Hope you're feeling fine in spite of COVID 19. Man, just thankful for the opportunity to wake up and make it a great day. How about you? Check in with us. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Wow, what a great show we have today. We've been, committed to inspiring and informing the people, and this is what we're doing from a global perspective. This is what we like to do. Today we're coming all the way live from Cameroon, West Africa. Whew. Yeah, Cameroon. Well, we have coffee conversations. Wait, where's my coffee? I have sat down here without my cup of coffee. Columbusong Coffee Company. We have that coming in from Cameroon, West Africa. Did you know that many nations in Africa, create primary premium coffee? You didn't know that, did you? Yeah, all you think about is Colombia and all these old different places, but look. Cameroon, Uganda, Ethiopia, Zambia. There's probably a few more out there nations out there where coffee is grown. It is a primary, staple agriculture product. A fruit. Coffee is a fruit. Did you know that? And man, when I first started doing the coffee thing, it's a fascinating story. Our guest here today is, a community influencer in Cameroon. He's an organizer. He's organized the farmers up there in the mountains and created a collaborative where, when you buy the coffee through Columbusong Coffee Company, that's directly affecting. Oh, thank you there, super producer Rhonda. Look at that. Got my Columbusong coffee all the way from Cameroon. Love it. Well, there it is. Anyway, he organized the farmers up there, small farmers up there, to collaborate, and they go and they pick the cherries and bring it down out of the mountains and get it milled, and it's a long process. Gets it right here to the United States so that we can enjoy it. But shoot, I'm just gonna let him tell it because I'm just a guy like you sitting here learning everything about our diaspora, and all the way live from Cameroon, West Africa. Let's bring him in. Matti Foncah. Matti, how are you, sir?
I am doing very well, Greg. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, look, what time is it in Cameroon?
It's just past 6 o'clock now. 6 o'clock in the evening.
6 o'clock in the evening. Yes, 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 sir. Yes, sir. Wow, look at that. 9 o'clock here on the West Coast, Long Beach, California, where we originate there. Such an honor, sir, to have you on. And I just want to share with the people. So why doesn't the world know that Cameroon is a producer of premium coffee? Why don't we know that?
Well,
Why is that a hidden secret?
well, I guess, like most things, those secrets do come to life eventually. But I think if we want to just get straight to the point, I think it's because over the years we've produced coffee in Cameroon like another colonial crop brought in by colonists. Can you hear me? I just lost you.
Yes. Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, they're brought in by colonists and grown for export. So the Europeans who mainly drank coffee, we didn't drink coffee back in the day around the 1800s, 1900s. And German missionaries and French soldiers came in with coffee because the climate was good for coffee. And so we produced coffee, but didn't drink it. And it was primarily produced for export. So now we have top quality coffee, and there was no real interest in paying the people a living wage, because then it would make the product too expensive at the other end. And we continue that legacy. This continues until today. Well, now we do know, many people do know around the world, specialty coffee, thanks to the effort that our farmers are making and our program of just boldly taking our coffee to world markets. We've been doing that now for over 20 years. I started doing that around 1998, just over 20 years. And I just believe that we have nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, we have plenty to be proud of. So that's why I took our coffee to the world.
All right. So, we, since I became involved, we know we're just a little small guy hoping to, even grow even the more over time. But it's so interesting when we talk to people in our world about coffee from Cameroon. There's two questions, believe it or not, that they ask. First of all, a lot of my people don't even know where Cameroon is. So that's like one of the frequently asked questions. Where's Cameroon? And you have to say, okay, it's on the west coast of Africa. What part of Cameroon are you in?
Well, we're in Cameroon, in the western part of Cameroon, right next, bordering Nigeria in the south. And it is the part that used to by the British, English-speaking part of the country. Right next door to us is the French-speaking part of the country. So a lot of people there speak French, and where I am, a lot of people speak English.
That's a perfect segue to what I want to talk about, and I want to educate everybody, so inform everybody. So you have two languages, primary language, well, probably many if you talk about the indigenous languages, but two, main languages. The French, the Francophones, they speak French because they were colonized by the French. Then you have the English speakers, the Anglophones, because they were colonized by the British. And the two don't get along. Is that a good assessment there, Mr. Foncha?
No, not true. I think the people do get along. The citizens don't have among themselves, Cameroonians, because if you're in the border region between the French-speaking part and the English-speaking part, it's the same people on either side. They have the same language and the same culture. So the people, the citizens themselves, they respect one another. I think in recent times, what we've found has been more a question of marginalization, where the central government, I hope you can still hear me because I keep losing you. Yeah, the central government has not invest time as many resources as was the expectation from the English-speaking population. If you want to look at the history a little bit closer, really Cameroon was first like a territory that was annexed by the Germans in the 1800s, in the 19th century. And then eventually the Germans got defeated in the First World War, and then Cameroon became a broken up territory put under the protection of France and Britain, which were the victors of that First World War. And then the League of Nations at the time, which administered these relationships, became, in 1948, I believe, it became the United Nations. And so Britain and France were then charged to then bring their territories, which they were administrators of, to bring them up to full independence. And so that's how come we having this French and English-speaking path towards independence. So administratively, each territory was, if you want to use the word, developed and was brought to independence following the colonial systems in place. So we had a very, very British system of ruling ourselves, the parliamentary system. in the French-speaking part, they had a very centralized government, and a lot of things were centralized and administered directly from Paris. We had a lot of self-governance, local government control, and local government power. So that's how the two parts came about. The people themselves, I don't think there was enough brainwashing done to make us hate ourselves. It's more when we became independent, and the terms of independence at the time was that the two sides were going to come together as a federation, because one territory is population-wise quite small compared to the other one, and in terms of land area also quite small. So the English-speaking part of Cameroon was quite small in terms of people, and then the French-speaking part of Cameroon was much bigger in terms of area and people. It was feared that if we're going to be coming together to form one country, then the majority French-speaking part of Cameroon, not only because of its size but also because of its population, was going to just completely eliminate the culture and the inheritance of the British-speaking part. So they went to the United Nations and made an agreement that independence was going to be achieved in the form of a federation of two states, two of equal statutes. So it never mind the difference in size or the difference in population, there was supposed to be two equal states. And so independence came about, and it was called the Federal Republic of Cameroon at the time. And things seemed to be going along pretty good, but it didn't take long. The French-speaking majority, or the president at the time, found a reason to say that it was we had already achieved some kind of unification and we all won. Therefore, they created like a unitary state, did away with the federation, which was, again, of course, it was totally against the constitution that was in place at the time, which said that the federal nature of the country was not going to be touched by anybody, at least not without like a 2/3 majority decision of each of the parliament. But anyway, so that's what happens, kind of like a form of annexation. And so there began the quest from the elites and then eventually the population of the English-speaking part to regain some form of self-governance and autonomy. And that came about because more and more those Anglophone or Anglo-Saxon heritage, the forms of governing ourselves, our courts, our institutions, our economic assets, they were all being eliminated and being replaced. And very, very soon you went to court, and if you didn't speak French, then you couldn't really have a fair and just trial. And so that's how things went. And then more and more we had schools where children could not learn properly because either the head teacher or the teachers did not speak the English, speak English properly to be able to teach them. So, and that's how things began to get to the point where we find ourselves today in a state of almost went to a form of civil war, but we're in a state where we have a crisis, and it's a crisis of the form of government that we're practicing right now. The population on the English-speaking side mostly wants to go back to self-governance, and the central government is still trying to say that we are one and indivisible. So that's how we are.
Let me ask you a question about that. I mean, we are in a age where we see such, upheaval at government and the people wanting, certain types of government to the point of, exerting violence out in the streets. Even here in the United States, I know you saw them storm the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. People were like, I would have never thought that would happen, But over in Cameroon, your president has been in office for almost 40 years. Like, what? How does that happen?
I know, it's crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's my opinion. I just truly believe that whether it's in government or in business or even in religion for that matter, look at the Catholic Church. You had Pope Benedict. He felt that a little bit too old to perform his functions. He quit and let somebody younger take over. Now our constitution probably because it's been manipulated for a point where our president could stay in for life. I think, in my opinion, is that it's just totally wrong to have a system where you have a whole generation of citizens being denied the opportunity for one generation to rule the country. If one generation rules beyond the lifespan of a generation, they're truly denying the other generation that right. We have to be also leaders. And that's where we are in Cameroon. I think it's sad. Yeah,
I have a lot of Cameroonian friends here in Los Angeles, in the LA area. Lots of friends, actually. And then I was going to save this to the last part of the show, but I'm going to let you know now. So I did my DNA. I got one of the DNA kits for Christmas a couple of years ago. Did my DNA, and my origination is in Cameroon. And I don't know.
All right.
Yes, I don't know what tribe. My buddy Charles, sees him and his wife. They're from Cameroon. I was so proud. I said, "Hey, Charles, I'm from Cameroon," and he says, "Oh, what are you, Baminda?" And I was like, I don't know." And so it was just really, really something. But when I watch, Cameroon, I want to. I've heard a lot. I know that there were some recent elections in Cameroon. I can't remember the gentleman's name who was running for president, and they had him here. He was here. They were raising funds and, doing what politicians do, try to gain support for him. And I guess he lost. And that was even a contested election time. Can you describe that time? And how long ago was that? It was like last year, right? Before COVID. The last election.
Yeah, it was before COVID. I think 2018 or 2019, something like that. Mm-hmm. And there we go. It's another typical case that, thankfully, Donald Trump set a standard which is even worse than ours. But we had a so-called democratic process. Voting was done, but in terms of laying out the result of the vote in a pure, clear and transparent manner, a court was assigned with appointed lawyers, appointed by the central government, which was not totally independent in judgment, and then they formed some kind of constitutional council and declared that the present president won by some kind of a landslide, which was hotly contested by the opposition. But all the evidence that the opposition brought of fraud and of all kinds of things were just thrown out. They were not even looked at. So not quite the same scenario as what you had with in the United States, but more like the reverse of what you had in the United States, where there was fraud committed, but that evidence was not being accepted by the court. And so here we are, and we have the president staying on longer and approved by a constitutional appointed court. Yeah.
All right. Now, my other friend has been sending me really graphic pictures of things that are happening in the countryside there, and she speaks of Ambazonia. What is that all about? Ambazonia. Is that what you mean when you were saying that maybe the English speakers would like to be autonomous and have their own self-rule?
It's evolved into that. It's been going on for many years. Ultimately, around 2016, teachers and lawyers, I'm just giving you the short version now, teachers and lawyers exercised their the civil right to go out and demonstrate about the marginalization of their profession. The English lawyers were upset, that they could not practice and they could not present their cases inside what you call a Napoleonic court system, or talking to magistrates who could not understand them because they practiced common law. So they went on demonstration, which was authorized, and but when they were done with their demonstration in my hometown in Bamenda, they were brutalized by security forces. They had their robes, which is something sacred for a lawyer, and the practitioner of their robes were basically ripped off of them, and they had tear gas fired at them, and so the teachers also went on strike because they had the same grievance about being able to practice their profession properly, or not being able to practice their profession because the educational system was being turned around from what should have been practiced over in this part of the country. So those were simple, citizens exercising their rights, but the government shut them down. And so students in the English-speaking part of the country, in the university, began to demonstrate. The military was sent into the university. Students were brutalized. I don't know whether any was killed, but they were humiliated. There were pictures of soldiers taking young women and rubbing their faces in the mud. A lot of crimes were committed, and that got the population incensed. And local issues began to come to the surface, like in my hometown. People were upset about corruption in the central in the civic government, where contracts were being given out to friends of the big mayor of the town, and the town was full of potholes, and you couldn't drown. Parking fines were all over the place. Parking meters were all over the place, and it's just not functioning. So people went on strike, and those activists were again beaten up and brutalized. And so just slowly like that, moving from just from people asking to be for their grievances to be heard, to then civil disobedience. When the people could not do very much, they began to impose what we call the ghost town, and then slowly skirmishes happened, because then the military came in, and the population in villages began to step up to say that we don't want the military. Get rid of the military. Let us deal with our police and our local administrators. But the military was there. So of course, when you have the military in place, soon violence erupted. Some soldiers were killed. They retaliated, and then slowly, the youth began to take up arms with locally made guns to fight the government forces. And eventually we got to the point where some kind of a government was set up outside of the country. They were then demanding at that time, it was more like trying to get back to our federation, which we had, but we just totally want to separate. So then this, and from that separation back to what the country used to be called Southern Cameroons, they adopted the nickname of Ambazonia being a reflection of where some of the first colonists came into Cameroon, into our part of Cameroon, a bay called Ambas Bay. So they had Ambazonia as their name, and a popular thing, because the youth who were resisting the military at the time, they called them Amba Boys, but things have gone from when the armed conflict began to get a little bit serious. The president declared war on the so-called terrorists, who were basically the young people resisting the military at the time. And that declaration of war then made things become a lot more serious. And we went through a period, 2017, 2018, and some of 2019 where there's a lot of brutality, a lot of killing from both sides, the military really carrying atrocity in the population, but also some of the Amba people against the military, and then also against some population, so, and that's where we are today. Things are kind of like in a stalemate. We still don't have full government control in the small villages in the English-speaking part of Cameroon. There's no security. We have to navigate a lot of all kinds of not only physical danger, but also extortion by gangs with a lot of guns, just to move our coffee from the villages to the mill. So.
Man, that's incredible. I mean, I've seen the pictures. Some of the pictures that she sends I look and I say, oh, wow. Really, really incredible. Let me ask you a question. So, all right, because, we are always in a learning posture here. So, we speak frequently on this show with the former ambassador, African Union ambassador to the United States, Dr. Arikana Chihambaro Kwa. We just had her the other day, as a matter of fact. And so when we begin to hear situations like this, does Cameroon go to the African Union to, mediate or help or peacekeep in these types of things? And if so, how effective are they?
Well, Cameroon doesn't go. Cameroon has not reached out to some other people, parties like governments, to say, help us, because the government of Cameroon does not recognize that it's anything other than something that like an internal problem that they can take care of. The political groups, the elite in the diaspora, the resistance within Cameroon, they're the ones that have gone to the African Court of Justice, to African the organization, the African Union, the United Nations, to try and to get friendly governments to table the problem of Cameroon as a serious problem that has to be looked at by the United Nations. But again, countries have to play country diplomacy, and you have this, what we call sovereignty, and countries have to be very careful how they go beyond stepping over the line of not recognizing the sovereignty of another state. So until we get to the point where an actual state member of the United Nations or another state member of the African Union can take this problem and say, look, it's a problem that needs to be looked at, then it becomes a question of, yeah, we hear you have problems in Cameroon. You should all have dialogue. You should have all-inclusive dialogue, which is true. And I think if we had true, honest dialogue, we would have solved this problem a long time ago. But I don't think the agenda of the central government is to see anything different than what we have in place today. We got some kind of a decentralization that has been put in place, where apparently we are now able to our different regions are able to govern themselves. That remains to be seen whether it's really going to work. And then the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon are supposed to have like a special status. I don't quite know what that means in reality, because I think the people are expecting that. Well, if you're going to govern yourself, you should elect your own governor, you should elect your mayors. You should not have government appointed people being administrators of where you are. And anyway, so that happened just in recent months.
Yeah. This is fascinating stuff. Now, all right, let me understand one more thing, and then we can kind of circle back to the coffee, because you said something earlier that's really, really interesting. All right. So with Cameroon, especially the French part, colonized by the French, we know that the French, in all of it's more than 20 nations in Africa, on the continent, that were colonized by the French. And the condition of their independence was that they contribute a portion of their gross national product back to the French government, that a good portion of, so companies can't do business in these French colonies, former French colonies, unless they go through France. I guess, France has got to be licensed to France, or however that works. It's the French they still got their fingertips on the continent as colonizers. How does that work, and how does the French government influence what you've just described in Cameroon? Do they have a say? Do they try to make peace? What's the deal with the French?
Well, I think you said it. If France truly wanted to see a solution to this problem, then France will make the problem go away. I think I see a lot of so-called independent countries living and driving an economy that is truly directed from outside, as opposed to looking after the interests of their own nations. A lot of many of the African nationalists that have tried to stand up for African independence have been killed off by colonial interests. Not only France, the CIA has been involved in some of those things too. I don't know about the British too much, but I know that they did commit a lot of atrocities. France was pretty bad because they had their French Legion, and it was just another kind of hit squad that had no accountability. And because they were not being directly administered by the central French government, then if they did something, it was easy for the French government to say, look, we want to take over this territory, and then make an official posture that they respect the independence of a territory, and then send in the French Legion to go out and do the dirty work, So we've seen problems, like this Algerian civil war, but also in Cameroon, in the French-speaking part of Cameroon, there was a lot of brutality in the 1950s, where the nationalists were just really, I cannot really find strong words to describe how the French brutalized and then created a government that was subservient to France and French interests to be the vehicle for independence. And on the economic side too, which is what you started about, if you look at if you go back to the Second World War, when France was occupied by Germany, by Hitler, the process by which the French economy was being controlled by the Germans right after independence, that's exactly what the French did in instituting the French African franc, the African French franc, and then the central banks of Africa could not take a decision without an approval of a member of banks of France central bank. There's always a member of the French Central Bank of France in the central bank of the African countries with veto power, and so on and so on and so on. So,
see, these are the things that we're talking about. These are the things that we're talking about right now. Even here in America, we're standing against, these institutional racism, the social justice, the systemic racism that happens. And you all can see this is on a global scale wherever we are, and very, very intense. Now, Matti, okay, so in a practical level now, you mentioned moving the coffee, you have to encounter, there's gangs, there's situations, as we say over here on the West Coast, the streets are hot, when you try to move your move your product through. So talk about, first of all, just briefly describe to us how the supply chain for the coffee works. Talk about your small farmers and how does the coffee travel from the mountains of Cameroon to the United States, and then talk about what you have done to try to mitigate, the criminals stopping you from making your moves.
Okay. Okay.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Look, when you talk about the supply chain, that's one whole story. What we're doing, the coffee you're drinking, I chose that we should brand it the Cameroon Boyo because we were using a completely different process to bring our coffee to the market. It was the process of liberation. It was the process of self-determination, which shows that we're going to go against any kind of art in our way to take our products and own our products at world market. So it's a long journey. It's a very, very difficult journey, but we managed to get that going. We managed to get that going over the past 20 years. Now, the bulk of the coffee from Cameroon is still being exported through the old system of, like commercial coffee that has no real identity. It gets gobbled up by big German importers or French importers, and then they put it in the mix and then make soluble coffee or blend it with other coffee and then roast it and then sell it in the grocery store. So the bulk of coffee is still going that way. I believe that we've created a process which is a process of empowerment for the future, which will go beyond my generation, will go beyond the generation behind me, will go beyond my grandchildren, liberating. And so if we have to look at that process and that journey, it's one route, and then the other one is another route. So I'll start off with the old-fashioned way. And the old-fashioned way is a simple one. It's totally based on, show me some money, I'll give you some coffee. Yeah. So big companies, they sit in offices in the big towns, and they have agents who roam around the villages, come to farmers' stores and say, look, okay, you got coffee. I have some money here. I'll give you this money. You give me your coffee. They impose the price on the farmers. Farmers, over the period of colonization, have systematically looked at themselves as the lowest of the low in the economic ladder. So they already see themselves as poor and powerless. And so when somebody comes in with a young man looking well-spoken with a briefcase and full of money, they just want the money. They believe in the money. So they give away their sweat. They don't look at the amount of time they spend looking after their crops. They don't look at the fact that they own land and they own skill. They just saw somebody told you, I'm going to give you $3. I'm going to give you $2 for a kilo of that coffee. And then they take it. It looks like a lot of money at the time, but within 2-3 months, it's gone. They cannot put their children in school. The people who buy that coffee, they have it in their possession. If they're independent, they then gather more and more coffee and then stockpile it in one place, put a small margin on, and then sell it over to some other person. And it changes hands like that, and then eventually gets to a mill where it's prepared for exports. And again, there it's not a specialty product. It's just a commodity. So the quality standards that they give it at the mill, it's not the same quality standard that we give it, and it gets processed and taken to world market. Looking at benchmark prices set like in places like Chicago, New York Board of Trade, and so in the kind of coffee export, the price for great coffee in New York, they call it the New York C price. And they look at like a small mix of coffee from Colombia, from Africa, and Brazil, and so on, then kind of come up with an average price of coffee. That price is absolutely it's impossible for that price to sustain anybody in the 21st century. In New York, the price of the commodity grade coffee is less than $1. Well, it's hovering around $1 right now, $1 a pound for all of the work that the farmers would have done. And then all of the processes it's gone through and the shipping and the export, and it still gets to New York for less than $1 or around $1 a pound. And even if it's $3 a pound, it still cannot sustain anybody at the beginning end. Then if you flip to our process, what we said was that we're getting more and more interconnected. In 1998, I was living in Los Angeles. I just moved to Atlanta, and I was operating a business in Atlanta. I said, there's no reason why I couldn't be the custodian of coffee from my neighbors. And if they're willing to put trust and relationship as our form of currency, then I can get their coffee to world markets and return them the money. If I need money to sustain me, I can then indicate to them how much of that money I need, and then they keep the rest. If they deliver quality, we'll sell it to a at higher market price. If they deliver junk, then we'll all sink because we'll not be able to compete. Mm-hmm. So we started that whole process. First of all, looking at ourselves as professionals, and then ensuring that we deliver excellence, because only by delivering an excellent product do we give ourselves that guarantee that we're going to be able to sell it at the end market. But if we sell it at the end market, then we become the owner of all of the economic benefits that exist in the coffee, because coffee did generate a lot of wealth for many, many people, mostly traders. Mm-hmm. And people at the two ends that give it value, the farmers and maybe the roasters and maybe the coffee houses, they struggle hard to earn their living. And then manipulators, people just take it and then change it. They put very little work. It's just a commodity. They make their margins, they make their profits, and they move on. So our own process, we organize farmers. Mm-hmm. They know that they have to deliver quality, because if they don't deliver quality, their coffee is going to get to the end market in their name, and then will not be able to sell it properly to eventually bring them back good returns. So, so we send out our so-called field agents, and then they go out and we organize meetings. Then we tell the farmers, look, you got the Amber Boys, you got the military. We don't know them. It's your coffee. We don't own it. The process that we've put together it's a farmer empowerment program. The legal structures that we're putting in place belong to the farmers. Farmers organize themselves into small groups, and the small groups form that kind of union that I am representing today, doing what I'm doing. So we're doing that, and farmers got it over the years. Slowly, from 5 farmers, we're now around 600 farmers moving our coffee this way. So you want to find a solution to a problem, let the local people find the solution up as far as they can go, and then let another local group take it on from there. So yeah, it costs us a lot of money. We have no choice, because the people who are on the road, they come out with guns, and you can't do very much. So you earn their respect by indicating to them that they're young people with guns, but they have parents who are growing coffee who still have to be able to eat. And if we don't get the coffee to market, they're not going to get revenues to feed themselves. Mm-hmm. Over time, we show them respect, they get to know us, and then they provide us assistance and respect. It might still cost us a little bit of money, but we do go on. Mm-hmm. So to make a short journey, say from, it might be like a 30-mile trip from one of our nearby village or nearby towns. Sometimes you have to go through about 8 checkpoints. Some other times you just can't go through because the road's just blocked. You have the military controlling, then you have the Amber Boys controlling, then you have some gangs controlling, And today it's deteriorated to the point where everybody's just putting money in their pockets. And the military doesn't want to know, the police don't want to know. You show up, you show them some money, they wave you through. You don't show them the money, well, then you have a problem. If you're carrying a bomb in your car and you show them some money, you're gone. So that's where we are. Yeah.
This is very interesting. So what you're saying is directly from these farmers, these 600 farmers, right to, Kalimbasong, Cameroon, Boyo, this bag of coffee has traveled out of the mountains gone through all of that stuff to get to, I guess you're coming by ship to the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I haven't talked about. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work along the road until you get it. So I was just talking about just moving it from the village to where we start to process it for export.
Okay, so now, when we talk about coffee, we're saying those folks just drink it. They don't know the process. So the farmers are picking. They're actually cherries or fruit, right? That's what's on the plant.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Okay, so they're picking this, and then you're trying to move it from the farmers to the first step of processing. And what is that called?
Well, the first step of processing is already done by the farmer. Mm-hmm. First of all, to get the best quality coffee, you got to be very selective how you pull the fruit off of the tree. It's like if you're going to pick up some apples, mm-hmm. Then you have to be able to tell which ones are ripe and which ones are still maturing, or which one's gotten so ripe that it's getting rotten. So you don't mix them all. So we pick the ones that are optimally ripe. Then the farmers come home and organize to remove the fruit part from the seed. To get the seed out of the fruit, they put it through a machine that crushes the fruit out and the juice and leaves the seed. The seed is coated with some kind of a slimy material called the mucilage. To get rid of that quickly, you have to let some bacteria act on it. So you keep it in a bucket of water, or you put it in a sack, and it ferments for about 12 to 36 hours. That fermentation process breaks down that mucilage, and then you can scrub it and wash it. It becomes very, very clean. You can put it in the sun to dry. That's the seed. But that seed is still covered with a husk, like rice husk. So our farmers do that first stage of processing, which is also very critical, because if you over-ferment the coffee, it changes the taste of the seeds. And if you under-ferment it, it gets a different taste. And if you don't dry it properly, it grows mold and fungus. So the farmers take care of that. And then we move it to what we call the dry mill. And that's where that husk is removed. They call the parchment. That's peeled off with big machines. And when that's done, we have to then sort out the coffee into different bean size, the fat beans, and then the little beans go into through different screens. And then people go through the beans individually, one by one, sorting them out to make sure that damaged beans, damaged seeds don't make the cut. So if you have like a coffee seed that has been eaten by an insect, that's going to have a nasty taste if it falls into your cup. So we'll remove that one. If you have one that seems to have been contaminated because the farmer missed it and it had gotten rotten in the farm, and so by eye we can see those things and then remove them. And then they put them in export bags, and then you go through the export processing, paying government taxes and so on before it's shipped over to,
This is very fascinating. Okay, so now with this coffee, what I do know is that, the taste is just so robust, right? And the one thing that we've learned is when we are, having events, because we build events, and so when we have events, we've noticed that if we put in a crystal glass just the grounds or the beans, it fills up the whole room with aroma, unlike any other coffee, to be honest with you. What makes that happen? Like, what makes that stand out like that? This stops people in their tracks. They're like, oh, man, whoa, that smells good. Why is that?
Well, many reasons. First of all, our coffee doesn't linger for months before it gets to you. It's probably gets to you in less than a week from when it was roasted. And then, of course, when we package it, we try and keep a lot of air away from the packaging so that the coffee beans or even the coffee grounds don't get oxidized. The oils don't get oxidized. The oils give those beautiful aroma. And so if you have them in contact with the air for too long, they begin to smell stale. But also our coffee and our soil gives our coffee some good attributes. But also the roaster, we work with people who are the best in what they do when we do the kind of collaborative work that we're doing. If somebody wants to buy the coffee, we don't refuse to sell it to them. But they could destroy it in the roasting process or in the brewing process. But if you know what to do, you take the green coffee and you roast it properly, it will have that beautiful aroma when you open it if it's fresh. If it's been sitting around on the shelf for too long, you open it, you won't get the same effect.
I mean, this is really fascinating. Now, you know, in the coffee world, there's so many different types of coffees now, and you know, people are mixing coffee with things. We did a show one time where we actually featured a band from Zimbabwe, right? And so what we did is we worked with the snack bar to feature the coffee, so coffee from Cameroon, but we mixed it with a tequila. And the tequila was from Mexico, but the processes of getting it to market were very, very similar. The people, small farmers, everything that you just described was happening to get the tequila from the agave plant into the bottle. That was happening to get the coffee, you know, to us. And so we kind of mixed it up, and actually it was a hit, you know. And so do you see different types of strains of mixing of this coffee? And what do you think is the most popular as you travel the world examining this market?
Well, when I travel around the world, I'm still very much with those in that sphere of so-called coffee geeks, the specialty coffee people, the purists. I have two issues when I move around. First of all, to support the fact that we have to provide a product of quality. But then, what are the parameters that make up quality? What are the fundamental activities? What are the fundamental inputs that give you quality? The coffee plant is very, very complex. And so working from that perspective, respecting the professionalism of one another, we move it down the road. And then you get a lot of creativity at the end of the journey when it begins to get into the bar. People mix it up with rum or whatever. I have mostly circulated around, well, let's brew this thing. And then my friend might say, look, that's how I brew it to get the best quality. The so-called Specialty Coffee Association of the world, which is an organization that started about 30 years ago in the US. Yes, they do set standards. But I think it's very, very arrogant of us to set absolute standards for something which is so personal and so complex and which hits individual. You cannot set a standard and then I sip my coffee and get exactly the same reaction as you do. We'll notice some things in common. That's normal. But you cannot begin to tell me that just because this one is from Zimbabwe and then the other one is from Zambia and this one is from Cameroon, therefore this one is more special than the other one. It's almost like saying, yeah, okay, you're from Norway and then the other person is from Brazil and then I'm from Cameroon and then who's better, you know? If the farmers did exactly the same thing, then different people will react to all of these 3 different coffees in different ways. And they would have a relationship with that product. They're all specialty things. So we focus on the fundamentals, and that's what I try to do. Set so-called scores to define what is good coffee. We miss the point. Yeah, there could be good guidelines, but look and see what the farmers did, what the mill did, what the roaster did before you get your coffee and taste it. And if you understand that journey, your coffee, you'll have a better relationship with your coffee. And you have a very enjoyable relationship with your coffee.
You telling me there's somebody testing the coffee and assigning scores to it?
Well, you know, I keep saying specialty coffee, and that's how they call it. It's our right to give ourselves any kind of power that we want. So Specialty Coffee Association, yes. And I respect them because they do a lot of work. But you cannot take a product like coffee and then do classifications that will do it justice, because it will always bring a surprise on you. It's another living thing created by God. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a product of nature, and they're complex. We don't know. We're just too arrogant when we think that we know, and therefore we can classify. It's good to give some guidelines, but sometimes we get to the point where people begin to, they get to the point where they're looking at these things as absolutes, and then a lot of good work gets thrown aside. A lot of creativity gets missed because we have a set way of looking at things and interacting with the coffee. So why not mixing coffee and cocoa, which we do with my friend in Arizona, Cortez Coffee. I don't know if they're the ones who roast your coffee. My friend's very, very passionate about coffee. He's from Costa Rica. So Cameroon coffee, Costa Rican coffee, cacao from Costa Rica, from Honduras, from Cameroon. Yeah, we respect that product. We don't turn our nose up that this is not. Yeah. When you understand what the farmer's done, you'll know what you have to do as a professional to bring out the best of that product. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question, okay? Because I got 2 more questions. We're running out of time here, but this is, first of all, it's just fascinating discussion. I'm just going to take this opportunity to invite you back so we can have more coffee conversation, because this is great. I love it. Okay, so let me ask you this. I've lost my train of thought. Well, let me start with the last question. All right, so right now in Cameroon, you described a lot of things. It's kind of changing the subject just a little bit, and I'll circle back when I remember what I was going to ask you. Right now, the AFCON is going on, the African Cup of Nations. That's like the African World Cup, the Super Bowl of soccer is going on in Cameroon. Now, how does the situations that you have described affect that? People from all over the continent are coming there, and in Cameroon I know you're the reigning world champion.
Well, no, it's going on. Unfortunate for Cameroon, we lost 4-0 to Morocco. That's a big shame for a football country like Cameroon. It's really embarrassing to say that another African team beat Cameroon 4-0. Well, that's what happened. But they made it to the semifinals, and it's going on. There's always that question of insecurity, but all Cameroonians like football. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's threats are not going to stop people from going to enjoy the game of football. And I think there's still enough humanity within the people. People know how far to carry out, I hope, atrocities. I don't want to say that you give 100% credit to security people for keeping the place secure. I think it's secure because that could have created a lot of havoc. Did not make it their mission to create havoc and to do damage that way. So it's going on, and people are moving around. Of course, there's a lot of security along the road. So you cannot come out. You can terrorize people just by firing a gun in the air. And so they try to make sure that that doesn't happen. But I don't see really that somebody's going to come out with a truck full of explosives to blow up the stadium. I don't see that happening. Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this now. The story that you have shared with us today on the path of the coffee, we're also filmmakers around here, so we would love to connect with you and create a documentary on the path of Cameroon boil coffee, go from the farmers all the way home. Would you work with us on something like that?
Sure, no problem. And let me just put one little in, having said that, and definitely for sure, because frankly, personally, I'm not getting any salary in what I'm doing with the farmers. It's a mission which I believe in. So we're building up a farmers organization. And then what we've done in 2019, we brought a young man from the United States to the village to live inside the environment of conflict and to document it with pictures and to tell that story independently. So we published a photo book. It's called Sources Magazine, sourcesmag.com, SOURCES mag.com. So we just launched it this week. This month, the month of January. And it's not a magazine to make money. It's a magazine to tell the story and tell the story with excellence, quality pictures. And so if you look at that, it will give you another view of how farmers live. And you won't see too much about coffee in there because we're focused on the lives of farmers. Mm-hmm. And the challenges that we have to go through. We subtitled the book Beans of Resistance, because farmers had to resist resist the security issue, resist the process of colonization, and then resist the lure of big money coming to their door to fool them to take their products for nothing, and then to handle all of that logistics with their coffee till it gets to you, and then they get paid. So yeah, definitely. I'll be glad to help out as much as possible. No problem.
Yeah, we gotta put that together. There, super producer. We need that one really, really soon. Okay, very good, Matti Foncah. Thank you so much for sipping coffee with us this morning. And we'd love to live in Cameroon with the farmers. That sounds like a mission right there. We need to make it happen.
Look, the young man, he was very brave because in one of the nights in the village, there's a lot of machine gun firing. So, today is a little bit safer than a year ago. Mm-hmm. We don't know how things will evolve, but I will definitely not want to be responsible for you coming and being harmed. But if you go to the government to get permission to come and document it, I don't think you're going to get a lot of welcome to tell the truth of what is happening. So we have to do it in a smart way. And it might have to be the documentary where you don't use those sophisticated equipment. We use cell phones.
Yeah, I got it. Well, we're hustlers around here, so we might be able to. We'll figure it all out, and this is really great. Grassroots level. The coffee is grassroots, and you can get that book at sourcesmag.com. We put that in the chat there, sourcesmag.com. You can get your Cameroon coffee from ColimbasonCoffeeCompany.com. Go on there right now, and we'll ship it right on over to you. We're about due for another shipment around here also, too, so we're going to keep on growing with it, and wow, what a fascinating discussion. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for lifting up, the diaspora through trade. This is the whole thing that we want to do. We want to build bridges of music, arts, and culture between Africa and African American in particular, but the world in general, and certainly want to be a conduit for that. And this is important work that you're doing. This is work that is divinely ordered, is what I think. And congratulations and thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your insight, your vision to help the small farmers in the mountains of Cameroon.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, bro. And I truly believe in, I call it the power of small. So our smallness is our strength if we know how to network it well. Take a look at what Corona is doing for us. See how small the coronavirus is, and see how powerful, how much it controlled our world for a whole year. So we got to remember the power of small and working together. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Awesome. Well, everybody, there it is. You know what to do. BeachCityRadio.com is where you'll see this on demand. Also on our Facebook pages, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Go ahead and like that page because this is where we've had quite a run here with some fantastic minds coming through here. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Just a blessing. Get your coffee, and hey, remember, love one another. Love one another.
There you go.
Love one another. Peace and blessings.